All right, so this is session 1 of 4 for what I'm calling Reign of Crows, which is a sort of higher level Game of Thrones family kingdom game with all the players from the same family trying to carry out agendas and missions and make their place in the world of this kingdom that we're going to be building today. We're using Fate, but Fate is very much just a loose rule structure to get answers to resolution questions. It gives us some tools in terms of creating advantages that we've got stuff we can track on the table. Generally, I run Fate pretty light. So if you're a Fate grognard at home, you may cringe when you see me run this. So we will see. I've got a loose structure of things that I've put together with stunts and character approaches, and I'm taking quite a bit from PBTA in terms of my approach here. We're going to be today building up the factions that exist in the kingdom, and then defining the player's family, and then the characters, and hopefully we'll get through a bunch of that and be able to maybe do some scenes. This is a game that is part of the Gauntlet Hangouts. So we do have the X card on the table, which is a tool for managing problematic content. Is everybody here familiar with that, with the X card? Okay, good. So generally for anyone at home, if we hit problematic material in terms of tone, in terms of actual presentation of ideas, things like that, we can X card and we can move past that. I might ask for some definition so we can get onto that. This is going to be a game that is, I don't want to say, gosh, how do I want to put this? The tone should not be PvP. You are all from the same family. When we get to the last session, people might be crossing each other's paths in that case. But generally, you are loyal to the family first, to yourself second, and then to your other players third. So those are the sort of the levels of that. But we'll talk a little bit about what we want in terms of tone and thinking here in just a minute. So let me put this on the table for the 4 of you. We're here early in the morning. We're going to be doing the setting creation. I haven't grabbed pictures. I haven't really put names down on the table or anything like that. Some of the factions say something about what the world is like. Clearly, we've got magic here, but I don't know about non-humans. I don't know about anything else like that. So let me ask you, is there anything that you definitely want or don't want in the setting? Or a degree of something that you'd like? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm interested in playing someone from the clergy, so I am interested in maybe heresy or different belief systems. I've seen that there are old gods, or like an old god and the new gods. That's something I would like to explore.
Okay, awesome. Anything else from anybody?
I'm in full-blown Game of Thrones mode since it started a few weeks back, so I'm kind of into this idea of human races. If there are non-human races, they're like on the fringe, or they're myths, but they might be real. I don't know if everyone else is in that same line of thought, but that would be my personal preference, but I could go either way.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I like mythical creatures out there.
Okay.
Like magic beasts sort of things.
So there's still things wandering around. Maybe there used to be non-humans around, but they've been stamped out or whatnot.
At least as far as we know.
As far as you know. Okay.
But yeah, like, again, Game of Thrones, like dragons, but more things.
Okay. And if someone takes the magic user, of course, you'll get to kind of define the fiction of that. It doesn't have to be big, flashy, but you're still getting the same effects. It's all about selling the fiction of it. And certainly, if we want to dial down, the magic chantry can be more prophetic than active. Anything else from anybody on the table? Okay, so here is what we're going to do. We've got this enormous fucking spreadsheet that Lowell has made, and I've put that out there. What it's got is it's got the 20 factions in it. They are broken into sort of 5 categories, and then each one of the rows, someone's going to get to set things. And what you're going to be doing primarily is you're going to be establishing an aspect for that faction that tells us something about them, and then a trouble aspect, which tells us essentially their problem or their drawback or something of that sort. Now, to make that easy, one of the tabs that we have here on the spreadsheet is a whole bunch of examples sort of what I imagine aspects would be like for factions. So that kind of tells you what that is. Once we get, essentially we're going to work through kind of column by column, have people say what they're doing. We'll go in a kind of a set order. And at the end, once we've got all those factions, then we'll go ahead and put in some of the relations. You'll see that each faction has a tier and a strength. At the start, there are 5 tiers. So imagine that tier 1 is like individual, village, that kind of thing. Tier 2 is your family, smaller noble family. Tier 3 is larger noble family, more reach. 4 is greater than that, and then 5. That essentially represents the scale between the different factions and organizations. And then they also have a strength representing how hard it is to affect, change, attack them. And that can get reduced, since that's essentially their stress track is their strength. And then relation says how much they like or don't like you. So a -4 means they really hate your guts, and a +4 means that they're a close ally or friend to your family. So what I want to do is, Sherry, can I have you take row 1?
Sure.
Okay, Patrick, can I have you take row 2?
Sure.
Horace, can I have you take row 3?
Yo.
And then David, can you do row 4? Okay. So go ahead and take a look at those, and essentially we're going to do them column by column. If you figure out something for a particular column and you want to move on to another one, go ahead. So let me give you a few minutes to take a look over those groups. If a group has a set of question marks under its descriptor, it means I don't have a name, or it's something that you can define a little further for that. Any questions about it?
All right, so you're indicating that I am taking row 4. Is that of the factions tab?
Yep. So your faction is down there, and first you can be defining what the sort of royal agents, the
masks.
Called them
Oh,
masks,
I see.
are.
Okay.
And then we'll work along to the other columns. This here, I don't have to have that open. And there's also a tab with names, because that's often the thing that I get stuck on. So feel free to come up with your own names or steal from there.
And you said the relation is how close our family is with that institution?
Yeah. So right now, except for the first column, ignore what it says because we'll be setting the other ones. The ones in the first column are everybody's at -2 to you because they're suspicious, but the other ones we're going to set some other numbers to. Oh, you can. That's good to know.
And for the factions, a trouble aspect, is that a trouble that would affect them or a trouble that we have with them?
Unmute. It's a trouble that would affect them. Essentially, it's a problem that they have that you can exploit.
Gotcha.
And are we giving them 2 aspects or 1?
I think just one should be enough for right now. We'll do that as kind of their key aspect. And throughout play, we may add more things in. You guys may manipulate things to add additional aspects, or we may define them in play.
Are we changing strength and relation numbers at all?
Not on that first column, and actually not until the very end. So don't worry about strength or relation, just about the aspects or the descriptor. Most of these aspects are actually stolen from Legend of the Five Rings cards. So
Nice.
used my crappy not to be played again CCGs as enhancement talent.
Got to do something with those thousands and thousands of cards.
Yeah. Horst, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Just how do you make the sentence fit?
Oh,
Because,
sure. If you right click, or actually, sorry, if you select the cell and go to format,
yes,
and then text wrapping, and choose wrap.
yes, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing rows or columns?
We're
So
we're doing the first column right now.
Okay, so I think Horst is doing columns and not rows. So, which is cool. Just
So, Horst, you should be doing the gauntlets, and then then we're going to work along that row there. Okay. Let's look at these guys here. Interesting. So Sherry, let me stop off and let's kind of walk down this first column.
Okay.
Things that are associated with the royal family. Tell us about the royal family and what you're imagining there with that.
Okay. So the royal family's name is Reykjavik, or Reykjavik, whichever you prefer. And essentially, they have a long tradition, and in fact, their motto is every rank is important. They are supposed to be service-based and respectful of all of the people of the kingdom and their roles. So they're very much, they have a lot of dutiful events and stuff where they celebrate the merchants or they celebrate the church and all of those things. That's a very important public face and thing of their family, and it's made them overall popular. And there's not a huge chance.
Okay.
And then, of course, the problem is that they're riven with conflicting factions. So a part of it is because they do listen to everyone, but the other thing is that, of course, there's more power to be had even within that inner circle, and all of them are trying to jockey for the best position.
Let me ask you a quick question about that. We know one of the fictions that we established in the setup is that the queen has died. And that there is a regent, and we assume a successor. How old is the potential heir?
The potential heir is like 16, and really wants to be in charge, and has a significant number of people within the family who think that, that he or she, I haven't decided, that she should be on the throne. But in the meantime, there's a regent, and it's an aunt.
Ah. So sister of the former queen. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Patrick, tell me about the status of the sort of the royal household, all the advisors, servants of the crown, all of that surround the center of power.
So this actually ties in fairly well with how that Reykjavik family is sort of set up. And I think with their sort of emphasis and constant reinforcement of your rank is very important, the ranking amongst the staff and the hierarchy and the helpers has really become stratified as well. So they have become sort of their own entity. I don't know how often like royal family changes, but even if it's not that often and it's just changes of rulership inside one family, the staff and the advisors have become solely their own thing, that they decide who gets promoted, they decide who gets hired and works what positions. They have a very sort of codified list of the responsibilities for different positions. And then their trouble is in that, since they have no sort of outside oversight, they're constantly jockeying and backstabbing for just the slightly more prestigious position of third under butler instead of fourth.
So a strongly ossified bureaucracy around the crown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome. Love it. All right. Horst, tell us about the Royal Guard.
So I picked, let's see. I picked when pushed react with overwhelming force. So I see them as obviously well-trained fighters. Maybe I pick loyal to the crown instead, but that's probably a given that they're loyal.
Okay. No, I like that. That says something new about them.
And so the loyalty aspect is a given, I guess.
Sure.
And for the trouble aspect, I chose something a bit baroque, which is monstrous servants. I don't know how literally we should take that. Maybe the monstrosity is that they went through some weird drill that asks like inhumane things from them, or maybe it is, I don't know, like sacrificial scars, or maybe it is that they all have to remove an eye or something to prove their loyalty. So the monstrosity doesn't have to be that they are actual monsters, but
okay. Says it's probably people see it as a weird supernatural ritual, but it might in fact be mundane, but a real testing of them and distinguishes them from anyone else.
Exactly.
Awesome. And what do you think? What should be the detail? Do you think it is scars? Do you think it is loss of an eye? Is it something else? What's the thing that marks them out?
So what does make them? What makes them monstrous? Maybe it's something like self-mutilation. I say they cut off their left arm. The left, not the whole arm, just the hand.
Okay.
How does this make them better fighters? Oh my god.
Well, the shield is obviously somehow attached to the arm, so that's not a problem. And it just stresses the loyalty that they have.
I like the idea that they have a shield that kind of has a built-in metal hand on it that they have to use there. It's not the most efficient thing, but it's certainly they're not going anywhere else.
The first thing I do with my fighters is make them worse fighters.
It's also, I mean, they're turned into weapons. Like the shield is so much part of their body that they don't need the hand.
Okay. I like it. That's creepy in its own particular way. I like that. All right. David, tell us about the King's Scrutiny.
So these are the masked agents for the crown. I expect they're kind of like inquisitors. If it's a queen, it would be the Queen's Scrutiny. It's just whatever, whoever currently is in power. Their aspect or their like motto or whatever would be every question answered. Their current trouble is that they're currently denounced by the popular religion. I imagine that's probably because they had some questions for the current religion.
Ooh. So they've been battling against the church.
Yeah, I think it's mostly like it's easier when everyone just anticipates that the King's Scrutiny is there because the king or queen wants them to have their questions answered, not because they're going to pull you out of your house and torture you.
Okay.
They are probably, and the way that we've painted our royals, they seem like very likable folks. So they probably don't talk about their scrutiny very often. It's very black bag CIA kind of stuff.
I like it. Is there a symbol or a marker or something that they use that people kind of gasp when they see?
I think it's still the masks. I think they still wear masks.
What kind of masks?
They're like half face masks. So you could identify somebody's like lower portion of their face, but that's usually not going to be helpful in a lineup.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Let's move on to column 2. Column 2 there are 5 noble families in the kingdom, the big ones. There are probably smaller ones scattered around, but if we get a big 5, your family is one of the big 5. And then here are the other 4 families. So I want each of you to define one of those. You each have a row. So Sherry top row, Patrick number 2, Horst number 3, and then David number 4. Notice the tier. David, you actually have the largest of the 4 noble families, the most powerful of them in your row. And Sherry, you have the weakest of them. So go ahead and we'll do aspects and trouble for those, and then we'll talk about what they look like.
Lowell, I have a spreadsheet technical question.
Sure.
In these bigger boxes, like if we were to put in a second aspect, how do you force it to go to a second row?
I think actually the easiest the way to do that is to actually just do it with a semicolon to break them out. I think you can do it with a what's the word? A shift return in the text window, the editor window up top.
No, that just pops you up to the next highest box.
Yeah. Now I would just do it with a semicolon to break them apart.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Sherry, again, going to start with you. Tell us about your family. That's the first perfect.
Mm-hmm. They're
Okay.
the ones that are about the same power level as we are. So their name's First Perfect. They are highly impatient. They run things with the leader of the family is the boss. He will listen to an argument for a little while, but then he just makes a snap decision and they have to live with it. He's obsessed with loyalty, so what he says goes. And the whole family is very much gathered around him and, how should we say, enabling him in this thing. So even when he makes bad decisions, they try to minimize the harm and make it look like his decision was the thing that won the day. They spend a lot of time bending over backwards for him.
Awesome. And eventually I'll have to look at the map. We'll put them on the map. But let's establish the families. Patrick, tell us about Irala.
The Urala family, they're I think like in the more distant past, they were that tier 4 family bucking on tier 5, and in the more recent past, one of the other families used like social manipulation and reputation attacks to basically knock them down to the tier 1 family.
Okay.
They have spent the last half century to century working their way back up the ladder, and I really love that aspect that you made of we will not be sacrificed on the altar of civility, of they're not going to play social nicenesses anymore, they're not going to engage in that sort of bullshit, they're going to move their family up any way they can and every way they can. And then their trouble is deal with the devil, which could be multiple aspects there. Of it could be this reputation they have of they did such a turnaround, they become so vicious and so successful that there are these rumors that they must have made deals with the supernatural thing, or maybe they actually did and consequences of that come up.
Awesome. I like it. When we're done with the other two families, I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you who it was who pushed them down the hillside earlier. Okay.
Okay.
Horst, tell us about Relwyn.
So I think Relwyn has been on the up and up, so the other way around than Irala. I think that they rely on their military might, and that they I mean, this is a feudal society, I assume. So they have, like, every family has peasants and people that they rule over, I assume.
Right.
Because it says despised by the people is the trouble aspect. So I assume that they are pushing their resources, like forcing their peasants to work very hard to achieve that military status. Maybe they what's it called? They force the, I don't know, the oldest son of every family in there.
There's like a draft or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Conscription. Okay. Awesome.
Press game.
And they have the strongest castle in the land. Is that like an ancient place that's huge, or if they built it up more? What do you think that is?
I would assume that. Well, I mean, I'm open for suggestion. It could be that they, through their military might, have taken over an old castle. Or I actually like the fact that they pushed their peasants to build them this modern stronghold.
Oh yeah, I like that. That's very cool. In the recent time, they've been building up this massive fortress. All right, we'll mark that on the map a little bit later. Like it. And then David, how do you want to pronounce that?
Lonor.
Lonor. Okay. Good, because that's the easier way. I thought it was going to be like Lyon or something French, and I was going to have a problem with it.
No, it's very. The name is what they are. The Lonor family. They control the most wealthy lands, which are rich with mineral deposits, or so they're enormously into mining, which we'll talk about in their trouble. But their aspect is never bend the knee. They have never bent the knee to the crown. The crown tolerates this because they have so much freaking money, and they're not a problem. They're very helpful, and like in return, they basically call whoever's the head of the Lonor family the mayor of their lands and don't make those people technically subservient.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a lot like the relationship Texas has with the rest of the United States. Where it's like, are you really a republic? No, but they've never bent the knee. God damn it.
Right.
And their trouble is their miners recently have started to mysteriously die. That's probably trouble because they're not able to make good on their promises if they can't mine. Two, they're probably trying to keep it quiet, but that's a difficult thing to keep quiet when your small folk are just dying.
Awesome. I like that very much. It gives us a nice range of families. Patrick, if I come back to Irala, which of the families, including your own, is the one that booted you over the cliff, or is it one that's a family that's dead now?
So first of all, I love how our 4 highest-ranking noble families are all people that like looked at the social and societal order and said, "No, thank you." They're people who just refuse to give way to things that should make them weaker. But I think it's definitely the Lonor family.
Okay.
I think there was something they did in the past on their way to wealth and power, and I love the trouble miners are mysteriously dying. I think they totally blame the Irala deal with the devil sort of aspect for that. They've latched on to a supernatural explanation, whether it's at all true or not, and it may well be.
Yeah, I think the miners curse the Irala family whenever somebody dies.
Nice.
And I like what you mentioned about the sort of independence of the families here. It does suggest that a lot of the other smaller families have been more tightly knit into the royal family's network, that they've been more assimilated, and that these are the ones who have more deliberately kept themselves outside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, let's go to column 3. Sherry, you're going to tell us about any kind of scholarship or university or academia. Patrick, about the chantry, whatever that is for mages. Horst, you're going to tell us about the older monotheistic faith. And David, you're going to tell us about the new pantheon of gods. And we will those. I don't know which one is more important or more relevant or what. We'll figure that out. So let's do that column.
I don't know, David, do you have an idea for the new gods? Because I think that, the decisions I make and you make is, depends on each other a little bit.
I was just planning on making them like fairly like an independent religion. I don't think that they're like a spring off religion of your religion, but I am curious, like, which is more in power right now, or which do the people accept more? What do you think?
I mean, I wanted to take the trouble aspect, what's it called, like decaying facade or something, so that, or crumbling facade or whatever it was called. So I think that they are on that maybe the new religion is stronger, or I don't know. What do you think?
That's fine with me. I imagine that the new religion on its face will be easier in its tenets and precepts.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like if there was like some kind of, for example, if the old religion is really strict and the new one is a hippie-esque or something, like drugs and song, or the other way around, that the old religion is a bit like Catholicism, you can drink wine and everything's fine after that, and the new one is Protestantism, where you really have to be strict. Or pagans versus, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think it's an offshoot religion. So you would probably consider us pagans. But yeah, I think that like it seems like the older an institutionalized faith gets, the more like rules and regulations spring out of it, just like out of the bureaucracy of like church folk needing to have self-importance. They keep making more and more rules. So I wouldn't be surprised that an old monotheistic faith would just get really convoluted and complicated, whereas this new one maybe not be clearly defined yet. So everyone's like, oh, this is so much easier. This is so freeing.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Sherry, can you tell us about Gauntlet?
Yeah, Gauntlet University it started out that it was a school that was built on the side of the Old Gods Mountain, essentially. But a town has built up around it. It's old and it's storied, and in some ways it's strangely separate from the faith and from the Church of the Bleeding Heart. And kind of always has been. They are notorious. They will take any student if they have enough money, but that's just to kind of keep the place going and to pay for all of the research that the true scholars that they take on through a set of rigorous tests and interviews, and some of the scholars traveling out to find new thinkers. They're very, so they really love that pursuit of knowledge, and they will do anything to get the money to get it. And of course, their trouble is still, even with all of their nods to getting as much money as they can, they still have mountains of debt because they do what they want to do.
Awesome. Is it considered prestigious to be a graduate from Gauntlet?
I think that it is in all of the families that look to tradition. It is considered necessary to have that in order to be in any of the higher ranks. It's just sort of like, you know, you have to have a college degree to work in certain fields. It's like you have to have gone to Gauntlet and taken your classical languages and
rhetoric.
Rhetoric, yes.
Awesome. Patrick, tell us about the Duskwood Society.
So the Duskwood Society, they're the sort of mages of this world, and they're responsible for sort of they're responsible for being responsible for the mages. They have to answer for what the mages that they train and sort of have bound up to them do. We'll get to it later along in the others column, but I also have the other strangeness out in the world, which I'd come up with the wild woods, which are these scattered, totally uncivilized, untrod, deep woods that have weirdnesses and reality warping and strange monsters in them. And so where a lot of the Duskwood Society pulls their reputation and whatever actual power they have is from going into these deep wild woods and pulling power out of them, usually in the form of wood. It's the trees themselves are soaked with the magic there. So a lot of their magic has to do with like carving wooden effigies or making paper out of the pulp of one of the trees and then using a wooden stylus to write in ink made out of the bark of one of the trees and then like burning things. So it's a lot of making things out of wood, and it's a lot of destruction through fire is sort of their path to power. And then sort of similarly to the Arala family there, they have a sort of dual nature trouble, which is puppets of the wild woods, which could be their reputation of people know this is where they go to get their power from, and they know they're sort of unknowable forces and factions in the wild woods, and that they might be influencing the Duskwood Society. But it might also be the pressures of the deals they've made or the things they took that they shouldn't have taken.
Awesome. Oof. I love that because that's going to be super creepy eventually. All right. So of the two churches, let's talk about the monotheistic faith, the Church of the Bleeding Heart. Tell us about that, Horst.
So I'm inspired by the Name of the Rose, the old blind guy. So obviously laughter is the fool's hiccup. I don't think that they embrace, fun and music. It's the other way around, obviously. So they're very strict, self-discipline. It's at least what they preach. And the Church of the Bleeding Heart it's a metaphor for this suffering that they embrace. And then as a trouble aspect, I chose crumbling facade, which could be like literally that that they lack the fundings, that the buildings are crumbling, obviously. But it could also be that behind the facade, that they are very strict. There is actually decadence and these things, that they don't follow their own rules anymore.
I like that because that ties into David's thing with the masks earlier. So I suspect it is that the king's scrutiny is in trouble with them, perhaps for having revealed some of those things. That seem cool, David?
Yeah, that makes the most sense.
Okay.
And so what about the tier then? Should the tier be 3 or 4 of the Church of the Bleeding Heart, the old religion?
Yeah. Who's more powerful, the older faith or the newer faith?
I think the older faith is still more powerful.
Okay.
Put them in 4, at 4 then.
All right. We'll get that set. David, tell us about the New Age of the 13.
So the New Age of the 13 is derived of 6 male, 6 female, and 1 nameless deity, or deities. And their hook into the people of the realm is that this is the God you have always been worshiping in your heart. Whichever one you are worshiping, it is one of these 13. The trouble is, they're called the New Age of the 13 because this isn't the first time they've been around. The religion is an ancient cult. So like cults will do, the deeper you get, the worse it goes for you, probably. But no one knows that yet because they're the new kids on the block. It's really an attractive religion. I mean, they've got whatever you want.
Do you mention is there a figurehead, or is it very much a dispersed? Like there are lots of different figures involved in this.
I think there is like one central, like all cult religions kind of have to have that one. But I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he or she is very long lived. This person has just recently come out of the woodwork. I wouldn't be surprised to find that this person was around when the cult was discovered before.
Awesome. This is a dark world. All right, there we go. Let's move on to the next column. Sherry, you're going to be defining the Royal Army, Patrick, the Merchants Guild, and then I have for Horst and David another kingdom, a neighbor or overseas, however you want to define that. However you want to present that. All right, Sherry, the Royal Army here. Tell us about that.
All right. They, next to the crown, are perhaps the most popular among the populace most of the time. They are viewed very romantically. They are very swankily dressed. They have, they have red uniform coats with epaulets and, gold braid and scarves, ascots and sashes and high boots, and they just look good. And they also are very careful to maintain that when they go to blows with someone, that those were evildoers and scofflaws of the lowest order that had to be dealt with. They have a very good PR department. It's essentially it. The trouble is that, of course, they have to deal with nobles and nobles that expect to be ranked in the ranks. So that it's always a thing of sort of a large number of drones that have to be treated with great respect.
So there is a strong, very independent streak then amongst the Royal Army, that it is its own kind of institution.
Mm-hmm. And it's also been always supported because it's a fairly standard place where the third sons go for families. It's where they would likely choose to go.
Awesome. All right, Patrick, tell us about the Exchange.
So the Exchange is the Merchants Guild, and I think with the sort of independence and power-hungry streaks that are running through a lot of the aspects of this kingdom, they also end up doing a lot of the diplomatic work. They can go anywhere, and they do have connections and deals with everyone because they're the people that sell things and move things around. And so their first aspect is every coin has two sides, just like most people have two faces, which is their... I don't know. I'm getting poetical with aspects,
Nope.
but it's reflecting that they tend to get the best out of deals. They tend to get the most out of negotiations because they really do sit solidly in the middle and refuse to take really solid sides on a larger scale. Which leads to their trouble of 1,000 masters, which is all of these little connections, all of these little purse strings pull them in every direction.
I like that very much. I like the idea that they are able to pull off good deals in part because they are able to see to the inner self, to the other options with places.
And
very cool.
Very much like you have a sword for hire. They're diplomats for hire. So there's a lot of they're walking around with your secrets, and if you don't keep their paycheck at the right level, they'll just take those somewhere else.
Awesome. Horst, tell us about Redania.
So I think Redania is, I imagine it a little bit like Byzantine. So they don't rely on their military might, but on their wealth, which is the trouble aspect is that they are very opulent and wear, I don't know, like what's it called, gems and these things, and they are known as silver-tongued diplomats. So maybe they are in a middle position between the kingdom and the kingdom of the Ark, trying to cut deals. So they rely on their wealth and their diplomacy rather than military might.
Awesome. I like the idea that external trade sort of has to go through Redania to bring in things from the outside. Excellent. And the Kingdom of the Ark, the city on the sea.
Yeah. It is a monstrous vessel, like bigger, like probably bigger than an aircraft carrier, you know, something that could never possibly be built, but it was. Who knows when it was built? Who knows how it was built? It's been around so long, the wood has probably petrified. So this thing is Titanic, but in the actual definition of Titanic. So its aspect is weather the storm. No matter what, they can just kind of sail away. They can go somewhere else if they have to. The problem that they have is they have no immediate allies.
David, have you read The Scar by China Mieville?
No.
I'm reading the book right now, and it's about a gigantic city made from like hundreds and thousands of boats drifting through the ocean. Really cool. Reminded me of that.
Nice.
Yeah, I like the kind of almost a Battlestar Galactica feel, the idea that there is this floating city and then there's a whole fleet.
Yeah, they've got more than one boat, but
that's great. Suggests old ancient magics afoot that have been lost. All right, so we're going to do the last column, and then I'm going to have you set relationship numbers for the things in your row, and we'll talk about that. So Sherry, you have dark forces. I don't know what that means. I just put it on the list. So there you go. And Patrick has defined the other strangeness. We have the assassins for Horst and the thieves guilds or guild for David. For any of those, I'll let you guys figure out what tier they are at, how strong they are, you know, or what that their size and reach is like. Nice, David.
It's the first opportunity I've had.
It's great because I'm just now working through the backlog and going back to the start and listening to the first episode. So
I love that he's the trouble for the guild.
yes. All right. Sherry, tell us about these dark forces. Who are they?
They're kind of literally dark forces. They blow in from across the mountains on storm winds, and they are hungry ghosts from some ancient battle. They can get dropped in anywhere where those storms linger for any amount of time, and it's been happening for centuries. The thing is that it has been happening more and more recently. However, they are a known problem. There's lots of preparations and special alarms for dealing with them. Lots of wards, those sorts of things to, safe places for people to go for the most part. But the fact that there's starting to be more of them is causing a great deal of unease. It's interrupting people's lives a lot more often, particularly in the places just past the mountain range.
So probably tier 2 in that it's a threat, but not one with, a lot of sort of influence. Does that seem right? Or
that's correct. They don't, to our knowledge, they have no leader.
To our knowledge.
Correct.
I'm writing that in quotes, by the way.
Thank you.
Scare quotes on my thing. So just know that. All right. Patrick, tell us about the Wild Woods.
I was curious about something there, Sherry, actually, first. Are they all from one battle, or is this a collection of ghosts from different battles?
They all wear strange armor, and there are lots of theories at Gauntlet about whether there are multiple forces. It's possible that there's multiple forces. There are certainly 3 different types of uniforms that have been noted and sketched. You could certainly attend to the current instructors that specialize in that, and they could give you more information. But it'll probably take about a year. And you won't know any more than you did. They have never been witnessed fighting each other, but they usually drop in 1s and 2s and 3s. So,
Excellent.
And usually when they drop, they all have the same outfit.
All right.
So I mentioned the Wild Woods earlier, and my idea for it is that there are just a lot of wild, untamed, uncivilized places in this land, and the deeper you get into it, the further you are from any sort of human carved out place, the weirder the places get, the more magical, the more twisted, the less reliant on normal laws of physics and things like that. And that I think sort of long-term human history, if you want to put like the different forces of the world on tiers, long-term in human history has been like the Wild Woods at tier 5 and humans slowly scrabbling up from tier 1 until they've now actually unseated the Wild Woods. This has become more a human world than not. but the Wild Woods are still strong. I see them as tier 4, but with the constant human expansion and encroachment, I think everybody, the forces of the woods and the forces of humanity both, realize that they're just on the brink of falling down to tier 3. And so I think that's making the forces in the woods sort of desperate.
Nice.
Very,
very nice.
The first aspect for them is constantly shifting paths, which is just the further you get into it, the more impossible it is to track, to figure out where you are. It becomes sort of a navigation by empathy and intuition rather than any sort of maps or compasses. And then their trouble right now is that human encroachment, that every year, every decade, every century, the humans move further out, settle more of the land, stultify it, make it static, and their power is slowly waning in this world.
Awesome. I like that. That fits with a lot of the other things we've established, so that's very cool. Horst, tell us about the Crimson Veil.
I think it's a group of professionals that you can just hire. They're not loyal to anyone but their current, the person who pays them. So I have as an aspect bound by a word, but it could be just honorable, or I don't know, like trustworthy, loyal, and so forth. But they do have the reputation to, I don't know, like reputation for the bizarre could mean anything. Maybe they have weird rituals, maybe because they pop out, they can come out of every shadow, so to speak. So maybe the reputation is that they, I don't know, have a pact with a demon or something that enables them to reach places that you physically couldn't reach. Or the bizarre could be, I don't know, that they're really bloodthirsty and I don't know, unmoral somehow.
Which do you prefer? Which one do you think is a more interesting thing?
I mean, I'm in the difficult position that I might not play again, so I don't want to introduce like weird elements that you all have to live with. So I don't know, what is the rest thinking? Like,
make it weird. I love weird.
Yeah.
So the then I would go for demons, that they actually have a pact with a demon that enables them to, to reach enclosed spaces.
Old forces, old talents that are still kept around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I like that. And certainly, historically, assassin organizations have been incredibly disruptive to the power and the status quo. Awesome. And finally, David, tell us about the families.
So the families are not at all like heretical or hereditary, like bloodline families. They are just loose affiliations of people who steal things. As soon as you are initiated, you become one of the, whatever family you have pledged to or whatever. And their deal is to steal from the poor because the guards won't listen to the poor. You've read Lives of Loch Lamora, like this is directly inspired by that, as Ramshackle Crow was. So the trouble for them, as the trouble for the Kappa in Lives of Loch Lamora, was an ambitious thief who was not into the idea of let's all just steal from people who, like, we won't get in trouble for stealing from. No, like, he wants to steal the most. So a highly ambitious group, they don't know, the Thieves Guild doesn't know who Ramshackle Crow is, if it's a lot of people or just one person, but they keep knocking off really wealthy people, and It's making the guards antsy because the guards are now going to have to try and enforce on the thieves, and it's making the thieves antsy because they just want to be left alone and steal from poor people.
I love it. That is great. That's a nice counterpoint to some of the other stuff we have. So that's really awesome. All right, here's what I want to do. We have those on the table. I want to take our 5-minute break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how people are seeing the family as a whole, and then people are going to pick characters and archetypes, and we're going to get some of that on the table. Is that cool with everybody?
Yeah. What tier do you want to set the thieves at?
Oh, that's a good question. I almost like, because you described them as being wide-ranging, as 3 or 4, like they have a lot of reach. Or are they more loose? If they're more loose, then maybe 3.
I think
they have.
They might be a really serious problem. They just never steal from the people that matter. So I could see that as being like a powder keg kind of thing. So
okay, yeah, go ahead and put that at 4. Makes them another nasty option. The other thing we'll do when we come back is, and I want you to have this in your mind when we're doing this, is you've got all those factions in your row that you've determined. The relations are set for the royals. They're all set at -2. But you'll get to set the relations of your family to those factions. You'll put one at a -4. They don't get along. One at a -2. They don't like you. One at a 0, and one at a +2. So you can do that now, or when we come back, you can be thinking about that. But right now, let's take 5, and I will get myself more coffee because I need it.
All right. Well, you had me worried when you put up a Worldwide Wrestling that there might be a Sunday that I couldn't play with you, but I'm sort of hopeful that I might still get spots.
Yeah, we didn't get the well, I mean, it's hard. Plus, it's October when we've got Gauntlet Con. People are
It's true.
kind of up on that.
You put it up, I was like, oh God, there's going to be everyone in the world that jumps on this.
Some people don't realize how amazing a game that is.
It's totally turned me around on like views of wrestling. It's not like I particularly love it or watch it a lot, but Tyler is a huge wrestling fan and always has been, and he's been sort of introducing me to selected things of wrestling, and it's been fun, and the game is amazing.
Yeah, we have, in my Wednesday group, we have one player who's a really huge wrestling fan, and that's actually why I started to play it in the first place. Was I picked it up because I was like, oh, he'll like this, and then I played it and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, and so I started watching then. And I've gotten Sherry to watch a couple things where she was like, whoa.
I really like the impressive physicality aspect of it. Like I love seeing high flyers or people that get into really gymnastic athletic stuff with wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say the game is sort of it was my first introduction to PBTA because I was looking for like a Christmas present for Tyler, and I saw this wrestling role-playing game. It said Powered by the Apocalypse. I was like, what's that? And so that started a whole process. So I have a special place in my heart for the game for that reason.
Oh yeah.
It's actually my entree to Powered by the Apocalypse games. It's the first Powered by the Apocalypse game I played with any attention. I think we'd had a couple sessions of Monster of the Week, and I was like, yeah, another way to resolve, whatever. But
and those were my first two as well. It was Monster of the Week, immediately followed by Worldwide Wrestling.
Yeah. I didn't get around to the big three until just a couple months ago. So, all right. Horst, I did mute you. You should be able to turn off the mute there. I just want to make sure on that because I haven't done that. Okay. All right. So, why don't you go ahead, if you haven't done already, go ahead and assign those relationships.
I was sort of curious about like before I assign some things, if we could do a brief talk on like high concept for the family and aspects that people might want to sit in, just because I don't want to, if someone wants to be the diplomat of the family, I don't want to bomb our relationship with the diplomats.
Okay, that's a good idea. Let's then come back to the relationship things. So I want to just establish a couple sort of informal things about the family. You are all members of the same family, whether that you're cousins or married in, or brothers, siblings, whatever. And you are not the biggest family. So what I want to figure out is what your head of household is like, is what the family motto would be, and what would be the trouble for the family. And then we could talk surpluses and needs after that. But let's see that. Does anyone have any ideas what you would like to see from this family? What the focus is, the intent, the approach of it?
And what tier are we again?
You're in tier 2.
Ooh.
Small but scrappy. Any thoughts on that, or thoughts on what you want for your character, and maybe we can shape to that? I know Horst mentioned working with the church stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It seems like since we're so small and everything, that we might be one of those families that has sort of stepped into nobility, where essentially we're a set of people that were maybe middle class before, but also a set of nobles that, you know, they married into the noble family over and over again because at one time they had money, or that we have money. That's what we have, is money. So that would, something like that. But then we want someone to place the money person. But, you know, essentially that a lot of that thing is that. So that's sort of also our trouble aspect, is that that's something I'm thinking about.
I like that. It's like having wealth is a solid power base to start from, but that sort of combination of merchants who married high and fallen nobles who married low makes sort of a dual bad reputation there, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't know if we're like, you know, I don't know if we're like super wealthy, like the Lenore family. But I expect that we're really like pragmatic with what we have, which is why we would marry into these like failed nobles, because we know what it could get us in the future, noble status.
That's nice. So the trouble aspect might be like upstart nobility, that you are kind of a weed that has emerged in the kingdom as the fifth noble house.
Nice.
That seemed like a good way to put that. And then what would be a good motto that reflects that sort of pragmatism and strategy?
First things first.
And what would that mean to you, Sherry?
It would mean that essentially they look at what they want long term, and they go through the steps that they have to go through to get to them. So they very much they do plan. They have a long term plan.
Okay, and they're not like ashamed to take small actions or seemingly demeaning actions if they know where it'll lead.
Exactly.
I like the secondary motto of "We have a plan."
We have a plan. Yeah. That's the Lannister words. We have a plan.
That's great. Okay. The head of household, the head of your house, is this a benevolent person? Is it someone who's hands-on?
Oh, it's totally someone hands-on with this sort of like upward mobility and money management. It's got to be someone deeply involved with everything.
Okay. All right. So you guys have a micromanager, head of household, which means that there's a certain efficiency within your household, but it also means that it's a micromanager, so they may butt in on your things from time to time. Does that seem like a good way to define that? Okay. All right. I think that's probably what we need to know for the family. So let's talk about characters. And there's a tab with the characters there that you can take a look at.
Oh, do we want to do the relations real quick of the factions?
Let's come back to that.
Cool.
Let's come back to that. So let me talk about what you're going to be defining for your characters and what you need to know. So this is, of course, fate. We have approaches. And you'll see I've got caution, charisma, force, speed, subtlety, and wits. Those are the numbers that when you're making a general roll with your character, when you're like one-on-one, that's what you're rolling with. Okay, that's your basic stuff. And you're going to have a +3, 2 +2s, 2 +1s, and a 0. And I'll come back to those. It's actually under the creation tab, has those numbers on it. So those are going to be your approaches. And then influences means what kind of pull your character has with those different areas. So if your character is doing a sort of a broader scale action with, say, the church or the populace, you would roll plus faith, if that's a bonus or a minus. Essentially, whenever you're, acting on a bigger group or with a bigger group, you get to use the better of the modifiers from your influence along with your approach.
Oh, you don't combine them? You use the better of the two?
No, well, actually, what I mean is, let's say you're using skullduggery against a magic group. You would, if you choose which one you had better with, skullduggery or magic, as your bonus, and then you'd add that to the approach.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So the numbers are, and I'll drop this in the chat here. Copy that. Here are the numbers that you need to. Whoa, where's my mouse? So that's what you need to assign.
So should we talk about what we're each going to choose?
Yes, and then each of you is going to choose an archetype, and those archetypes are the military/force person, the commerce and wealth person, the magic and secret knowledge person, the faith and populace person, the underworld and subterfuge person, or the diplomacy and scholarship person. So I heard from Horst, faith and populism. Other people.
I always love magic and secret knowledge, and it works out well with the row I got for factions.
I'll be underworld and subterfuge.
My.
Okay. Sherry, you good with that?
Yeah. Let's see here. I mean, it leaves me 3 options, so let me consider.
So let me explain what that means, choosing an archetype. Under each of these columns, you'll see it's got a special resource. That's a special set of checkboxes that you can mark to do things. And then there are 11 possible stunts that I've come up with. And you're going to start with creation here. You're going to start with 4 of those. You can get more if you want. We'll talk about how that works. I'm hoping you're having a hard time choosing because they're all awesome.
That is exactly it. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
well, that looks good. So don't worry. I'm not in any despair here. So. kind of want to go with diplomacy, because then at that point we're doing entirely all secrets with no direct action. Which means we leave that up to other people, which sounds kind of funny, actually. So,
is that what you want to do?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, what were you doing? I was reading something else.
She's going to do diplomacy.
Nice. And the 4 stunts, is that including the resource one in the yellow box at the top, or is it that one plus 4 more?
Ah, good question. It is that one plus 4. So you get your resource, and then you get 4 of the 11 stunts.
Okay.
Oh, I like that the mage put a 0 in caution.
I feel like it's irresponsible for mages digging up ancient dark secrets to have a high caution.
Fair enough. And if anybody has any questions about what the stunts mean or anything like that, feel free to ask. We'll supervise from here.
Lowell? Can you
Yes?
talk to me some about the practitioner stunt under Magic and Secret Knowledge?
Sure.
Like, what do you mean by bonus effect, and what are conditions, and how do you clear them out?
Okay. So bonus effect means normally when you roll, you get some shifts to do things with, which essentially can be spent to make the effect stronger or to do some other like effects. I'll give you the examples that I have here on the sheet. Make an additional fictional change, have it reach further, make it hidden, affect a higher tier, longer lasting, more effective, more invokes, things like that. If you take practitioner, then let's say you did it with fire. Whenever you describe your spell effect as being with fire, you always get to, and succeed, you always get an additional shift to spend on bonus effects.
Okay, I gotcha.
Okay. And then you can mark burned out. Essentially, that's a status you would have to do a massive scale effect. So that's a catastrophic battlefield altering ritual or whatnot. And then while you do that, while you're burned out, you can't use any other magics for a while. But that'll clear at the end of the following session. So it is a pretty dramatic spend.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, leave it to me and your wife to have not listened to you. So essentially, the connections, does that count as one of our stunts?
No.
Or essentially the different resources? Okay. I just.
And the the power special resource for magic and secret knowledge, when it talks about spending a box to increase the tier of an effect by 1, is that specifically like a magical effect or anything that I or someone else is doing? What is that?
Generally, I would have you mark it to say, well, I'm using my magics to enhance this. And you can essentially just define it in the fiction.
Okay, so it's open to any sort of effect that I could work my way into.
If you can give me a fiction for it, yes.
Cool.
So, so you guys have had the stats in. You're picking your stunts. There are 2 other things to figure out for your character, and then an additional option. Figure out your key aspect, which is the descriptor. If we give you a 1-sentence, pitch of your character, what is it? It's something you're going to be calling on in the game when you invoke it. It doesn't have to describe all your character, but describe the sort of most important thing. And then the trouble aspect is essentially the thing that gets you into problems or complications. And it should be something you want to play out. And it's something that you can self-compel to cause yourself a problem in a scene to get fate points, or if it comes up and I see that it's, really fits with what's going on, I can call on it. So you need to do the key aspect and the trouble aspect. The other option you have is, if you want more stunts at the start, out of those 11. You can take more. For each one you take above your starting 4, you reduce your refresh by 1. Refresh is how many fate points you start a session with. You can do, so you would get 7 stunts, but you would start each session then with 1 fate point, which is a difficult trade-off.
We're still on key aspect, trouble aspect, right? Or is there something else?
Just stunts, key aspect, trouble aspect, and once everybody gets that stuff picked, then I'm going to go ahead and do introductions of characters. And I see you've marked yours on your other column, right, David?
I've marked mine on my other column.
Yeah, it looks like you highlighted ones over on the stunt sheet.
Yes.
Okay.
And do I need to move those somewhere else?
You can cut and paste those over to the character sheet if you want. It's up to you.
Oh, I see.
Oh, and we need a name for the family.
How about something like Soul Ren?
I like that.
You guys good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then your name is Rudapest Solren?
Yes.
It's a family name.
It is a family name. If anyone knows the Soul Rens, they know at least one Rudapest. I figure. Incredibly common name. It's like the family matriarch a few generations back. So.
It's like the Lisa of the Soul Rens.
Yeah.
All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to have each of you introduce your characters, talk about them, how you're picturing them. I'm going to ask them some questions about that. And then in the interest of getting some things on the table, I'm going to move forward and set up the situation. So, Sherry, tell me about Rudapest Solren.
So, Rudapest, this particular Rudapest, is the cousin who was always there when someone was arguing. She would come up and quietly sort of divvy things out so no one had to be at least extremely loudly quarreling. She didn't mind if you were over there kicking each other's shins silently, but if you were making noise, she would always come over and work things out. She's pretty, but not lovely. She's a little too ordinary. In fact, one of the things that's sort of striking about her is she's particularly ordinary. She's not. And her clothes look like they're beautifully made and everything, and yet they never seem to fit her quite right. She's always seems a little at odds with her appearances. However, she's very well spoken, and she tends to be very quiet, but when she does speak, it's usually exactly to the point. And she is first and foremost a dutiful daughter.
Even when that requires her to obey the social strictures and so on?
Exactly. She's not your iconoclast person at all. So she's a person who believes in compromises.
And what are
compromise.
what are the coolest things about the stunts that you've chosen? If you want to share what you think is most important for your fellow players to know. Okay,
so the first thing is that people tend to not notice her. So she's a really excellent rumor monger. She can just sort of get a little a word in there, and before you know it, everyone believes it to be true because they don't remember who first said it, but since everyone seems to know it, it must be true. She's very good. Let's put it this way. You never notice what she's done. So like as a mastermind, she's always hidden. She's never the one that's responsible for getting those jabs in. She's not memorable in a lot of ways. She is, however, popular because she does help people out. And if they, and she will always help them out for the most part, or at least seem like she's helping them out.
And you're good at your special ability is to change the relationships.
Exactly. I'm good at change. I'm sorry. I was supposed to do that. Okay. So I'm good at changing. I'm just. Yeah. I'm essentially, I can create advantages with groups of people or places. So essentially, if I can lay groundwork for you guys.
All right. I'm going to move on. So I'm kind of scooting through these. Hawthorne Solren.
All right. And Hawthorne is not his given name. I think it's part of the I've forgotten my own words. Duskwood Society. They take tree names for the different aspects of the Wildwood. He, as previously mentioned, is not overly cautious in what he does. I made the stats, and then I started playing with some of the character aspects, and I'm finding interesting ways that they conflict and could match up with each other. So he's got the trouble aspect of perfection is key, but he's got a high speed and a low caution. But I think it's the speed is not the sort of or the perfection is not like taking a long time to do something. I think he's gotten very good at doing things, whether mundane or magical, very quickly. It's just that unless someone steps in and edits him, he'll do it a dozen times in a row. He'll make the same thing a dozen times just because he sees a tiny flaw in it and how he can do it slightly better this next time. And so he really does do well with someone in there to sort of rein herd over those impulses and edit him. Let's see. And then my key aspect is the world is a canvas and magic the finest paint. He really just sees every problem as something that is inelegant, that his power could bring some smoothness and some sort of sheen to every situation. There's nothing he can't make better with a little magic. The power stat is my special resource, and I can use that to help with my things or other things like we talked about and bump the tier effect of it up. So maybe that's some of how we've been like punching above our weight class, is adding in a bit of magic to things. And then I've got Lore Master and Second Sight, which are all about information gathering and knowing things about the world. Illusionist is exactly what it sounds like. I can veil things. I can make things look different. I can use my Bane to hand out trouble aspects for other factions, which is, I think, another aspect of punching above our weight. And wardings, where I can pull out countermeasures to make things smaller than they would have been. Is that what that means?
Yeah, essentially that if it's something potent like a powerful magic, you can reduce it so it doesn't have nearly the effect that it would have otherwise.
Okay. And I did take an extra stunt, so my fate is lowered a little.
What do you look like?
Hawthorne, I think, is very tall and thin, but not like skeletally so. Sort of a swimmer's build. He's got a very full beard and wears very colorful, very expensive looking clothes, which may or may not be enhanced with a little glamour here and there.
Okay, nice touch. Awesome. Brother Jonick. has stepped away. Okay. So tell us about Rebecca then, David.
So I think that Rudapest was the pretty sister. Rebecca is less so.
She got a weird name like Rebecca. Who's ever heard of that before?
I know, like, yeah, like they always name the first daughter Rudapest or whatever, and then the next daughter's just like, it doesn't matter, we already have a Rudapest.
That's great.
So she's just kind of lived her life that way. But that has led her to be very clever. Because she can really use that because no one notices when she's not there. No one notices when she is there, unless she wants them to. And she is dutiful, but in a different sort of way. She knows what this family needs is more money to keep things going. And she has contrived this scheme, which is kind of her trouble aspect, that people are getting close to guessing. Turns out Rebecca is the force behind this alias Ramshackle Crow character.
Nice.
I doubt she's ever like if she is ever, it would be very, very infrequently, but I doubt she's ever actually the one breaking in and stealing things. And probably part of the problem is like she is just getting into this seedy underworld game. So she didn't know that she's screwing over all of the Thieves Guild. But she is still able to hide behind this veil, at least for now, of this alias that has sprung up on her own behalf. I don't even think she came up with the name. Someone else came up with the name, and she has just adopted it because everyone thinks Ramshackle Crow is a man, first of all, so that's super helpful. But I've got, since that is kind of her thing, she is legendary when she chooses to be. She has a reputation when she chooses to have it. Those are some of her stunts, but she is also a master of disguise, and she can be on time. So she can just kind of pop up in a scene, ignoring the usual limits of time, distance, or plausibility. Just, oh, you needed help with that? Of course.
I liked that stunt a lot.
It's a great stunt. Awesome. So that's Rebecca. So are you? So you're the younger sister of Rudapest. So we have a stronger family connection there, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Note how similar their approaches are, and yet.
I learned from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And Brother Jonick.
So, Brother Jonick is a man of faith, at least on the outside. So I think he's very charismatic, and he has his way with words. But on the other hand, he's preaching water and drinking wine. So I see him as like a fat man with, who actually literally likes wine, has a red, like the nose of an alcoholic, and maybe he's an alcoholic. But he can be witty and charming when he can gain something from you. But he can also be very, like sharp-tongued. He can be very, very cruel if he doesn't like you. So I have my special resource is that I can incite hatred, accusations, or heresy at someone, an individual. And I have the opposite that Rebecca has, so I can just disappear when it is safe for me to be not at a place. What else? I can. I'm not sure what is the threat, because
so
I can.
Curious about that too.
There is going to be a threat to the kingdom, which I will establish. That's why it has a big T on both of those, and that will be in play once we get rolling. It'll be hinted at early on, but it'll show its face pretty early.
So in any case, Brother Yannick can send another faction against the threat, and then both will take damage, the threat and the faction I send. So I see him as a manipulator with a charming outside and a pretty, I don't know, cynical inside.
All right. Perfect. Let me ask you guys to go back to the factions page now that I have that in mind. And if you haven't already, if you could set those faction numbers for your things. I think that's just David and Horst. One's at -4, one's at -2, one's at 0, and one's at +2. I just want to have that on the table before I get rolling here.
And it's the factions that we have established.
Yep. Yeah. Everything except for the on your row, except for the royal stuff in the first column. So for you, Relwyn, Bleeding Heart, Redania, and Crimson Veil.
Okay, so we are placing in all of them, or just the ones after the first?
Ones after the first. So for you, the Lone Or, New Age, Kingdom, and the families, you'll set relations that way.
Okay, and say the numbers one more time, please.
-4, -2, 0, +2.
No, Horse, you leave the Royal Guard one alone. Those all stay at -2.
The royal family is suspicious.
Wow, we really do not get along with the other nobles.
Lone Or, you guys are...
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yep.
It's because I'm setting up a heist.
Awesome. Oh my God, can we do a Game of Thrones heist story? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
But to rob the Lone Or's blind.
So I'm going to set up a situation. I'm going to frame all of you in a particular gathering. This is just to kind of play out and set up some of the events that are going on. We'll stop to do rolls when we need to. Essentially, this is going to be kind of on the personal level here at a gathering. I want to set the stage for some future things. So this is sort of a prologue, if you will, to things. Does that seem cool with everybody?
Mechanical question real quick, just because I've never actually played Fate, just read it in various forms.
Absolutely.
Do we start with the full 3 fate points if we haven't defined our aspects yet, or do you not get the fate points till you define aspects?
So you start with those full 3 fate points, and in play, if you fill in one of those blank aspects, the 1, 2, 3s, then at that point I immediately give you an extra, for the moment, fate point to have.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's how that works. So Solren, you 4 have accompanied your head of house, a man named Ashton Solren. He is the leader of the household, the micromanager, the one who is always checking in on your plots and plans. Maybe doesn't know everything that Rebecca's doing, but certainly knows that she's involved in things and has chosen you 4 as the movers and shakers. And you have currently, you are at the capital, which we're going to call Anjarn. And you are here for the funeral of the queen. You have heard a couple of things that are going on right now in the kingdom. Things that are rumors. In particular, you have heard that in the wake of the Queen's demise, with the aunt coming on as regent and the young heir queen, that the royal household people there have begun to stockpile. Like they're not sure how things are going to shake out, so they are gathering resources, people, items, things together. You've also heard that the university, you're neutral with them, but Gauntlet has been taking the opportunity to claim a clearance of certain kinds of debts to the crown with the passing of the Queen, that they are attempting to gain for themselves an edge there. But the sort of oddest thing that you will have heard is that the fortress at Dioto, one of the old castles, it was a former seat of the crown before they moved elsewhere, when situations and alliances changed. Dioto became kind of a forgotten castle, but still occupied by royal troops. There's been no public word, but you have heard that something happened there, that the royal tombs there were raided, that the castle was broken into, things happened there. And most importantly, that when tradesmen arrived with a standard caravan, they found the place emptied, the garrison completely gone, and not sure what happened there. So those are some things that are on the table: the university, the stockpiles in the royal household, and the attack on Dioto. And you guys are gathered for the funeral services. That all is going on, and this is one of those important gatherings. The castle is set out with all kinds of finery and dark colors and so on, and there are representatives from all the households here. And one of the chamberlains comes down to speak with Ashton, and he will come back to speak with the four of you. Your head of household gathers you four together, and he says, there's a situation that has arisen. It may be an opportunity. It may be a threat. As you know, we need to be establishing our alliances and watching out for those who might threaten us. This place is going to be a hotbed. I will talk more specifically about what we need to be doing, who we need to be working on, but here is the thing. The Chancellor just came down to me to tell me that the services for the Queen have been delayed. That is unusual, to say the least, given that the preparations have been going on for a week. I don't know what's going on, but we need to find out what is happening. Can I trust you four to look into this?
Is it seemly, do you think, to be advancing the family's plots before the funeral's even taken place?
Yes.
Oh, fair enough.
It looks at you sort of quizzically, like we're always planning. We're always doing this. And he says everyone else will be operating in the same way once news of this gets out. So we have a very short time. I had contacts with the Chamberlain, so they've spoken to me first. So we may have a brief advantage in that. So what do you want to do?
Well, I want to figure out who's at a disadvantage because of the delay, like who needs it to happen on time most.
Okay. So this seems like a simple thing that you can analyze. All the royals would like to get that done. That's probably the most important thing because it represents stability and transition, and not having that done is unusual. So they are probably the ones that are going to be most put out by this not happening right away. And they're probably running around trying to deal with that. The families who are here as representatives, they're less bothered by it. The university might be a little bit nervous because this might change their present situation. Does that seem like a fair enough answer? And how do you go about getting that info? Rudepest.
Essentially, she checks in with, let's see here, the people that are of her set, but she's watching for who's aware of it and who isn't, and she just kind of works up the chain of sort of awareness and uneasiness to find out, like, essentially who seems actually more distraught. So she sort of actually just works the room, following that sort of thread of anxiety. First, she figures out who knows it, and then she kind of tracks it back. She doesn't even have to get that close, I assume. I can make a roll if you would like.
Yeah, sure. We can do it for a create advantage or a discover.
Sure.
That seems like you would be rolling with what is your approach here? Charisma, does it sound like?
Yeah, that would probably be it. Yes.
Let's go ahead and have your roll.
Okay. All right, so I rolled a 2, so that's a 5.
All right. Do you want to do this as creating an advantage, or do you want to get a couple questions with discover?
I think I'm going to...
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe Brother Yannick could follow up if you see that the clergyman has information, for example.
All right. I will create an advantage.
Okay.
And, let's see here, and I can create... Let's see here.
Create advantage with a couple of invokes on that, and if you have something that gives you a bonus.
All right, then what I would do is attempt to create an advantage with several invokes for my fellows. Let's see here. Do I need a better roll in order to create like 3 invokes? Because I'd like at least 1 for each. So
yeah,
I could
bump it up because it's going to be two shifts for each one.
Okay, so I'm going to create the aspect. Everyone knows a Rudepest. So I can talk to you about anyone because they'll always be interested since they know someone named Rudepest, and I get to be compared to that person. And I will spend 1 of my fate points and in doing that, but I get 1 back, right? At some point. Because I created the aspect.
Yes.
I'm goobing it.
Okay. So right now we've got these on the table essentially for you to use to give yourself a bonus or a reroll. Who wants to go next? It sounded like Horst, you had a plan.
Is there a place that we're keeping track of temporary aspects?
I'll put them on the in the sheet later. I'm just going to hold up this card for the moment.
Okay.
Very technical.
Yes.
So I have a question. We are in a room with other nobles and other people, or are we on our own?
You tell me. You can frame it. Rudepest has said that there's a gathering of people we've established now. There's kind of this turmoil. There are probably several gatherings of the different nobles. You could go off on your own. You could deal with one of them. How do you want to frame that?
So if we are in a room with a lot of other people, I would look for my fellow priests, especially the ones that what's the name? that Budapest has worked on. So if she could point me out a priest who might have knowledge, because that's what she was trying. She was trying to, get a reading on the room, so to speak.
Absolutely. So this looks like we're going to kind of interact. Let's say you find a priest of the old church, a fellow like yourself, perhaps a little bit of a paunch on them, like yourself, enjoys some of the liquor, has the great big mutton chop sideburns that come down into a great big beard. His name is Otto, and he will greet you gregariously, but does that kind of with his teeth to express his disdain at the current situation. And you want to kind of work him over to get some info, right?
Yeah, so I think that Yannick has grabbed like a decanter with wine and 2 glasses and moves over to Otto and says a little bit under his breath, "So my brother, why the delay?"
He looks hesitant. Let's have you make a charisma roll here. That seems like what you're using here.
So I think we had a link to a dice rolling thing.
Yeah, let me find that, of course.
I think it was.
What did I do with that?
I mean, I can use D6s. I have different colors. I'm not sure how it would work. Like one is minus.
Here, let me grab the link here, which I had in here. I'm going to make this overly complicated. There is the rolling room in the link there.
And what would I roll? DF?
Yep. So put a 4 in the DF and hit submit.
Nice.
Ooh.
So that's a +3 plus my charisma, which is already 3. So it's a +6 or 6.
Actually a +2 because you got a minus there on one of those dice, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Exactly.
Do you want to invoke this to give yourself another +2 on that?
Yes.
Okay. He's very reluctant to tell you. Clearly, this is deep knowledge. But I'm going to give you, with the discover action, a question and then a follow-up question. So what is the thing you want to get from him?
Well, I want to know what causes the delay.
And he leans in. He clearly doesn't want to tell you, but he will say, "I've spoken to the matriarch of the church who is overseeing the rituals. The queen's body is missing. No one's certain when it vanished, but it is gone. And as I understand it, they're attempting to prepare it for a closed casket funeral to cover over the matter."
Well, this is troubling, brother. Very troubling.
It's an ill omen for the coming age.
Sorcery, I say. Probably these new pagans from the 13 freaks.
Oh, yes. This is certainly possible. It wouldn't put it past them with their pagan delights to engage in such a horrific thing.
I have heard they're into adultery and all kinds of pleasures of the flesh. It is disgusting. And
yes, disgusting. Does that?
drinking my wine.
Do you have a follow-up question for him? You've got one more.
Well, the follow-up question would be like my question to myself is how can I get a benefit from that information? Obviously, I will ask him who is currently seeking for the body, if anyone.
And they will say, he will say, unfortunately, the task falls to the king's masks.
Incompetent fools.
Yes, absolutely. But certainly the king's scrutiny is apparently looking into the situation right now. They've taken charge of the investigation.
And I will then, I will exchange some pleasantries with him and then relay the information to the family.
All right. All right. So Rebecca, that information has been passed on. There's been some talk around. What do you want to do?
So I've been walking the room with Rudapest. And while she has been seeking out who seems really put off by this, I've been keeping a keen eye for someone who seems smug or delighted about this.
All right. It definitely seems to you that the Irala family, in particular, one of their mages, a guy named Branch Irala, seems the least put out by the current situation.
I'll grab Rudapest by the arm and kind of point this out to her.
That's not good. Let's see here. And she also turns and she says, "Good eyes," because she adores you, her little sister. No one else may notice you, but she does. So let's see here then.
So Rebecca, with
Do you
that
know
information
anything
in
about
hand,
him?
go. What would you do?
Huh?
Sorry, I got confused there. So you've got Rudapest in your arm. You've spotted this guy. What would be your next move, Rebecca?
I would converse with Rudapest about it to determine what we should do. What do you make of that Irala gentle mage?
Those guys are always so hard. I mean, you hear the rumors. And she goes, and I've never heard anything to counter them.
Should we perhaps let Hawthorne know?
And she goes, yes. And if we could find the masks.
Ooh.
Yeah. And she goes, the easiest way to find a mask is not to look for a mask, just to get the word. I'll take care of that. And speak to our brother in magic. He may have some sense or ability to figure out if it is the Irala.
All right. Be careful with those masks. They're, well, better you handle them than me. And I'll go and seek out Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, when your relation finds you, where are you at?
So first of all, just for the scene in general, I'd like to put sort of a finer point on something. I have the Lore Master move, so once per session, and there's not much longer in this one, and declare a new global fact about the world, magic, or the threat.
Okay.
And so you said it's been about a week since she died?
Yes.
So I like to say it's been about 8 days. and there is a very heavy superstition in the world, or maybe it's tied into a tenet of the old faith, the bleeding heart, and I think also tied in with the legends of the Stormborn, that if you don't properly bury someone within 10 days, that's what happened with the Stormborn. That's sort of the popular legend of how the Stormborn came about, is they were these warriors of this battle that weren't honored correctly, that weren't buried in the right amount of time. And so I think like more superstitious minded people, especially in the family, are getting really frantic about this funeral not happening.
Perfect. Perfect.
But where you would find him is over with some of those more distressed looking family members. He's intentionally hunted out ones that are like making religious symbols, sort of warding off evil symbols, and look really distressed. He's there, and he's in his amazing clothes, but as you come up close, you see that he looks just wrecked. It looks like he's been crying, and he's sort of fidgeting with a symbol of the bleeding heart in his hands, and he's really sympathizing with them and like trying to get in, like, we feel you, we feel your family's pain. This must be existentially terrifying for you. I can't imagine going through this.
How close do you think that we are, like, relationally? Like, would we be familiar, or are we just like distant cousins, or what do you think?
I think maybe like first cousins. So at a very young age, we grew up very close. But I think the society takes off people with any sort of magical spark fairly young. So they have like a close childhood, and then it's been a distance of training, and now he's sort of a new person come back.
So I think that I would probably call you by your given name initially, unless you like stopped me and told me not to. What is your given name?
Oh, nice.
Oh. Erastus.
I come up close to you. Erastus.
And he'll look down. He's not. That's a little needle in the back of his mind there. Like he doesn't like that. Yes, sister. I'm sorry. I was just. If you'll excuse me, we have family business to attend to, but I will be back to help comfort you. And I know this service will happen soon. It will happen in time. I sort of turn back to Rebecca, and we take a couple steps away.
Look, Erastus, I've noticed something about one of the Arala. I believe it's one of their mages. I don't know, Pine Beard or Oak Breath or something like that. I can't keep track of this.
You're as dismissive as Jason.
That one over there, and I point him out. He seems particularly pleased about this outcome. Could he have something to do with it?
And you've come to me for my expertise help, little Becky.
Look, Erastus, if anyone would know, it would be you.
I have some scrolls. Let me. It's not something for public consumption, but let me retire to the society chapter here, and maybe I could look into a few things.
Very well. I will endeavor to be the comfort that you were for these folk.
Oh, I'm sure they'll appreciate your kind words.
And he was kind of dark in his sort of description. So some of the people that he was talking with have tried to kind of extricate themselves already, since he was a little doom and gloomy
And of note, once we get about a dozen paces away from that group, like the circles under his eyes and the tracks of tears and the disheveled hair, they all just sort of fade away. It was just an illusion he'd put up to look like he'd been grieving.
Yeah, I will like insert myself and take a leaf out of my sister's book and endeavor to be charming and like change the conversation to something more appropriate for when you must wait upon the funeral because the body is missing.
Excellent. And then Budapest, you were going to go get a mask?
Oh, yes. I would get the mask in the way that you always get a mask, which is you start a rumor, and you start the rumors as close to them as possible, but without any actual presence. So it's very simple. I just start with, it seems that the Arala seems rather pleased with the situation. That's all I have to send around. And I'll say it in that sort of pointed way that, it's pretty clear exactly which one, and that he seems to be the only one, and anyone could see it. And then I just kind of fade back so that, again, it blends. So I will say that you can see someone react in a slightly different way than the others. The others are clearly into the gossiping and so on. But this other person seems to take it a little more seriously, and you will see that Irala go to leave to head out of the room, and this person shadow them. All right, and I have that I can place an aspect once per session on anyone I wish with 2 free invokes. So essentially, I will say Irala is the most likely suspect. What this does is it sort of makes things a little easier for anyone else moving around, which means that we can be a little bit more aggressive in our follow-ups. It's another set of aspects you guys can use.
Yeah.
At this point.
And I will spend a spy to disguise myself. I think that masks always travel in pairs, and I am one of them.
Awesome. I'm gonna cut to a sort of a brief descriptive scene here, so to close this out. So I'm going to kind of narrate something here for you there, Rebecca, and probably Hawthorne and Brother Janik will kind of catch the edge of this as it happens. You'll see this mask. You kind of follow behind them, and they head out. This Irala, Branch Irala, has gone out into the courtyard, and the mask follows up behind him. And you will see Irala turn around, this guy turn around, and he will say, "I know what you think, little spy. I know what it is you want." And this mask takes a step back, and Branch Irala says, "Know that the calling has been made, that the old ones are returning, and that we have taken your queen for our own." And he kind of reaches out and grabs with his hands onto this mask, and you'll see his skin of this Irala becomes wood, thorns, and you see him shift and change into a tree and crush the life from this spy, even as this tree, blackened, leafless, grows into the ground there with a crackling sound, and probably lifts the guy off the ground even as the tree grows up. And there's blood dripping from the guy, and you'll see a face still in that tree before it becomes solid, look down at you, and will say, "We are coming." And that's where we're going to stop for today.
If
that's okay. Okay.
Hawthorne, you're about to have a problem.
Yeah, things are getting sort of serious here.
So that's where we'll stop for this time. I would like to have you come back, Horst. Would you, if you have the time in your schedule?
Well, I have RSVP'd for all 4 sessions, so let's see how it works out.
Yeah, we've got, if we have another person who's going to be coming back who missed session 1, who will be coming in for the later sessions, but I wouldn't mind having 5 because you built the character and you helped create the stuff. So I think we can play around with that if that's cool with everybody.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see that religious stuff play out there.
Okay.
Me too.
And what we're going to do next time is we'll kind of close out this scene, and then we'll go to the seasonal actions and what you guys are doing in terms of plots and taking advantage of things. I'll have the head of household put some objectives that he wants done, and we'll figure that out. Does that seem cool?
Yeah.
Generally, with a 4-session game, I do Roses and Thorns after the 2nd and 4th session, so we'll talk about that next time. Any questions?
No,
okay.
that was really neat.
Awesome. I will see everybody next week then. I'm going to stop the broadcast.